Please stand with me for a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we'll go into good and welfare. For anyone addressing the school committee this evening, please begin with your name and address. Your comments shall be no more than 5 minutes of speaking time and should be in good decorum. Please be aware that the committee cannot respond to you during good and welfare, but may direct you to an appropriate member of the administration team or may meet with you directly after the meeting for further discussion. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the school committee this evening?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ellis Cooper. I'm the Director of Operations at the Boys and Girls Club of Northern Rhode Island. I do know that this topic might be addressed tonight. However, I just want to show face and address a topic of conversation that happened in the past weeks about the Boys and Girls Club here in Woonsocket. There was just some conversation about our programming not continuing due to a relationship with another constitution, which in no way is what we stand for as our mission or what we're doing. We're at a record high across the board in all of our programming we have in terms of childcare, ages K through 5 through 12, preschool, which is 3 to 5, and our teen center. It's at an all record high here of 13 plus. We're servicing over 100 kids, 120 kids registered for our teen center program, which is after school. We're at numbers of 190 kids for our child care, which is ages 5 through 12. And our preschool is about 46 kids we have enrolled into our program. That is before and after. So I did want to address that because, it's already hard enough as it is trying to get these kids into our program. And the last thing we want out there is anything that's going to divide us even more than what we see on a day-to-day basis. In no way would we diminish anything we want or what you guys want with the kids and support. And I think we stand as a partner with you guys, not as someone that would take away from your struggles, your challenges, your mission, your wants, and the community's needs. So I did just want to come up here and share that information. Our partnership that we have with Rise Prep Memorial in no way diminishes anything to further your mission or support that we have with the public schools or anything, right? Our goal, just like everyone else in this community, is to service the kids, right? Our goal is to provide a fun, safe environment for the kids, and nothing will stop us from doing that. No amount of money, no amount of partnership, no amount of anything will stop us from doing that because that's what this community needs most. And the day that we stop doing that, the Boys and Girls Club of Northern Ireland, you will no longer see me or any of my colleagues represent the clubhouse, but that's not our goal. So I just urge anyone that has the idea that we're not doing that, please at any time, come take a tour, come see what we do here, come see the programs we run, the support we offer for the kids, the services we offer for the kids before anything, because what my staff does, and just like your staff does, they work hard. It is a grind every day, day in and day out, and they show up, right? And that's what these kids need the most is consistency, and we pride ourselves off of that. They're there every day, right? We got kids that are 18, 19, 20, upward to 40 that are working every day to make sure the kids see consistency, they have support, and to diminish that or have any other output on that just isn't the right thing, right? There's no reason to say to the staff, hey, we're disrespecting what you're doing. And that's how it came across just for my staff, because it's hard enough as it is to get the kids to come into the door, let alone to have anyone else think that what you're doing isn't enough, right? Anything that you're doing is more than what some of these kids have when they're not in your facility. So I urge anyone that is interested at all in come seeing our facility on 600 Social Street to see what we do, what we offer. And more importantly, any way we can help further your services and support what you guys do in the school department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the school committee? Seeing and hearing none, we have no recognitions and announcements. So we'll go to the approval of minutes. So I'll make a motion to approve the September 25th, 2024 open meeting minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Any corrections, changes to those minutes? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
I'm going to abstain.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to approve the September 30th, 2024 special open meeting minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke. Any changes to those minutes? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, we'll go into the consent agenda, and I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Does anyone want to take any items out of order or discuss any items within the consent agenda?
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc?
Purchases, the, Jesus.
Purchase and transfer.
Yes, I know that purchase and transfer, but the last item, which is relative to the, trying to find it.
Blackstone Valley.
Yeah. Blackstone Valley and the train. How did that come about? And like, where, that money isn't from us?
It's from a private donation, $10,000. I believe it was the Pepito organization, the private foundation that the Pepitos run. They gave us $10,000, and I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
I can give you a little bit more
Right.
background information on that, Mr. Leclerc. So the Pepito Foundation and the Rhode Island Foundation has provided the district with grant funds to establish what's called Beloved Woonsocket, and this is a group of city stakeholders, including the school department, and through the process of this, so last year is the first year. It's a 3-year grant. Last year was the first year in which this community partnership has created plans and action plans, or is in the process of creating those to create a beloved community in Woonsocket. And it's based off of much of the violence that's been occurring over the last few years. So one piece of this is increasing our community, our students' access to different types of experiences where they might not otherwise be exposed to. So one example is that we talked about was the Polar Express, in that many families are able to take advantage of it. It's pretty expensive.
Very.
It's a great experience, but it's very expensive. This was an opportunity to provide our students here in the community with access to the Polar Express. So those funds are being used for tickets, basically, for students and their families to
Really?
attend the
Oh,
Polar
that's awesome.
Express. Because you know the crazy irony is that it's literally in our backyard, and a lot of our students can't take advantage of it because of
Yeah.
the fact that it's expensive.
And I figured that's what it was, but I wanted it brought out, so at least it's out there. People understand that there's some things
Yeah.
happening that are positive.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
That is
Thank you.
awesome.
Anyone else? Anything else? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus, Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll ask Leilani Sanchez to give us her student report.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I'm very happy to be here, of course.
Would
So-
you speak into the mic and a
Yes.
little louder, please? Thank you.
Of course.
Ooh,
Oops. I'm very happy to be here, of course, for another week. And I just have some updates on events that have happened over the past 2 weeks, or just for the month of September and October in general. And then some things that are coming to us. So first thing is our pasta dinner night. We did have that. I had given promotion to it at the last meeting, and we are very thankful for all of those who contributed to the pasta dinner night at Lower Level Bar and Grill. Our night was successful, and we had over 15 donated raffle baskets to give away, which made the night even more fun. And we made about $2,000 of profit to go towards the senior events,
Wonderful.
which is very, very amazing. So just a personal thank you to everyone who bought tickets and all the people that we were partnered with that made that night a success. Our college and career fair, we also had juniors and seniors were invited to a college and career fair that was held in the WHS cafeteria. This has promoted many of the programs and the colleges available to our students and has given them the opportunity to be more involved with their community and just to open their eyes to things that they are able to accomplish just outside of high school and within high school as well. And then some things that are coming up. We have our portfolio challenge, which was posed by Mrs. Audette, which is one of our main advisors at the WACTC. It's an encouragement and a friendly competition, which is going out to all seniors to complete their senior portfolios, which is a graduation requirement. And it is a challenge to each of the senior advisors. For every student who completes and turns in their portfolio, a slice of pizza is added to the advisory's plate. And there's a wall with like all the advisory names, the teachers' names for those advisories. And by the end of, I believe it's March, whichever senior advisory has the most portfolios complete will be provided with a pizza party incentive. So that's very exciting. We just announced that recently. And then my personal favorite, I love Spirit Weeks. We have a Spirit Week coming up next week, October 15th through the 18th. We are holding some new themes for Spirit Week. So Monday, of course, we have no school, but Tuesday is Dress as Your Future Career Day. So students will have the opportunity to dress as what they think might be their future career. Wednesday is teacher-student swap. So teachers would dress as students and students would try their best to dress as teachers. Thursday would be Rhyme Without a Reason. And I kind of had to explain this to a few teachers and to a few parents as well. But essentially it's kind of like dynamic duo day that we've done in the past. You grab a friend or maybe two friends and you have things that are completely unrelated but rhyme and you try to dress as those things. So one of our examples was a chef and a ref. So those two things rhyme, but they're completely different. So it's a little creative challenge. And then Friday is class color day with our freshmen being the color orange, sophomores being green, juniors being blue, and seniors being the school colors of maroon and white. And that concludes my report.
Excellent.
Very good report,
Great.
Ms. Sanchez. I think there's a lot of energy going on at the school, and I'm glad you're relating that to us. Great job. Anyone have any comments for her? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file a student representative report. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Dr. McGee, may I ask you for your report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start with the personnel matters update. So committee has a list of the most recent positions that were added in the district. Just to give you all a count in terms of the number of vacant positions we have a total of 19 paraprofessional positions that are still vacant. We have 6 teaching positions, 2 custodial positions, 1 secretary, and 1 OT-PT position as well in the, I believe it's an OT-PT position. Is that correct, Sharon? Okay, thanks. So we're continuing to work hard to try to fill as many of the positions. We continue to have difficulty. I think I mentioned this at the last meeting with our elementary positions. As I think I said last time, in years past, it's sort of been flipped where the high school positions have been more difficult to fill and the elementary positions have been less of a challenge, and that's the opposite. Moving forward, and it continues to be a challenge for us. So, but we're continuing to monitor school spring, and if it's sometimes it's word of mouth as well. So we're doing our best to try to make sure that we fill as many of these positions as quickly as we can. I'd be happy to answer any questions with respect to personnel. Anybody
Anyone?
has any questions? No.
I think we're good.
Okay, The second item on my agenda was at the last meeting, I had indicated to the school committee that I was going to provide an update on the after-school program, specifically the Boys and Girls Club. And I know that Ellis, Mr. Cooper, is here this evening from the Boys and Girls Club. And I did have a conversation with him. I think it was the following day after the school committee meeting. And much of what Ellis explained this evening was, the information that I got from him, which the program is running. The Teen Center program is running from 2 to 6, as he said. There are over 100 students who come in and out during the course of the week. And I'd also like to let the community know that we have a very strong partnership and relationship with the Boys and Girls Club. We've been working with them, and I got to tell you, and I'm not that I'm, gonna toot Ellis's horn, but I will say this: since Ellis has been here, that partnership between the Boys and Girls Club and the Woonsocket Education Department is about as strong as it's ever been. I can recall, or I can't recall in the past where the Boys and Girls Club would actually reach out to us and come to us to try to talk about solutions and trying to solve problems and trying to just, make the community a better place. So there are a lot of different types of opportunities that we have where we reach out, on both ends. We reach out to them, they reach out to us. There are many times where Mr. Quadros and I, who meet with families weekly, we meet on Fridays and trying to solve conflicts between students in the district and trying to provide just supports to families around before and after school, and we've sent a lot of families to the Boys and Girls Club, literally calling them on a Friday saying, "Hey, is somebody going to be there? We're sending you this family to find a way to support them and to support their child." And I got to tell you that Ellis is always there to welcome them there. So I just want to thank you, Ellis, for the work you do. And the partnership that you all have with us. It really is a pleasure. That's it.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you.
I'm sorry. That concludes.
So the one question, and just a confirmation, Mr. Cooper, that the Boys and Girls Club afternoon programs are not shutting down. As a matter of fact, they're going to continue strong as ever. Okay, thank you. Any questions for Dr.
Mr.
McGee?
Chairman? I'm
Sure.
sorry, just someone asked, something's correct here. Someone told me that CCF's after-school program at the high school has been funded.
It has, yes. So initially, the 21st century funds were decreased.
Yep.
However, there is funding that they're getting so that they're going to be able to provide the homework help after school along with a late bus. So I just found that out yesterday, I think. And so we're really excited
That's good.
about that opportunity.
Good.
And also, I'm going to mention in my health and wellness meeting, but the Blackstone Valley Prevention Coalition Youth Program and also sponsors a couple of events throughout October after school. So that adds to after school programming.
Right.
So, thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Kepiscus?
I would like to apologize. I was informed by several parents that the program was shut down. I don't know where they got their information, but I did hear from several people. Perhaps it was disgruntled employees. I don't know who they were. As a result, they told me that they believed it was connected to Rise Prep. We all know that there's always been a tense, strained relationship between the district and Rise Prep because of the costs that are connected. And to her credit, one of our administrators was emailing me during the meeting to tell me that my information was incorrect. I don't look at my phone during the meeting, so I didn't get those emails until the meeting was over. I concentrate on the meeting. I don't look at my emails. So to the extent that the information that was given to me was incorrect and I spread it incorrectly, I do apologize to you. I apologize to your staff. I never meant to disparage any employees at the Boys and Girls Club, anybody who works with children. That is hard work. And that I did not mean to disparage anybody in your organization. And I'm very happy to hear that your programs are still running. And again, I apologize to anybody who was offended.
Our partnership with Rise Prep is put on great. We rent out our space during the day. Our room is not occupied. Any of our kids outside of our preschool is occupied during the day until they're high school. Very number 2 year lease, but it is nothing in terms of that taking any kid that we have. Our goal is not to take as many kids to make anything financial. Our goal is to figure it out whoever we take. That's ultimately mission. That's never going to change.
Thank you, Mrs. Kepiscus. Anyone else? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the superintendent's report. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now we'll go into the school subcommittee reports, and I'll ask Mrs. Kepiscus and Vice Chair Burke to give us the policy update.
If you don't mind.
I knew that was happening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The policy subcommittee met yesterday, October 8th at 4 p.m. We had only 2 policies before us because we knew these policies were going to be lengthy in consideration. First policy was the Title IX policy. Our existing Title IX policy was reviewed based on a need to update the policy to align it with the new amended regulations issued by the Department of Justice effective August 1. In essence, the amendments are intended to expand the actions covered from sexual harassment to include sex-based discriminatory treatment, even if that treatment doesn't rise to the level of harassment. After discussion of some of the finer details of the changes to the policy, which I'll spare you, the subcommittee voted to forward the policy as drafted and presented with some minor corrections to the full school committee for its consideration, and it will be on our agenda at our next meeting, October 23rd, 2024. The next policy was the non-union benefits policy. That was a little more difficult. This was the subcommittee's third go-round in discussing this policy. While the policy was presented to the subcommittee as essentially housekeeping in nature, further discussion demonstrated that there were many changes that would be substantive in nature and that certain non-union employees would see substantive changes to their benefits, particularly in the area of vacation time as it relates to 12-month non-union employees, some of which would affect certain non-union employees positively by adding vacation time upon the passage of the policy, and negatively by a cap on vacation time, no matter what the employee's longevity. Of particular concern to me was the move for a use it or lose it position on vacation time to a policy which provides covered employees with the option to receive a payout annually of 5 vacation days if they're not taken. To me, that modification should require a fiscal impact statement to the district. And I think it should be presented before the policy is passed. As the chair, I expressed my concerns as well that all members of the policy subcommittee, but for the 2 sitting school committee members, would be impacted by the policy. And therefore, I thought it was rather inappropriate for the subcommittee to be the authority reviewing and passing on these benefits policy. As if to prove the point, the meeting then became a discussion as to how certain employees would be impacted by this policy. Our HR director expressed concern that it was turning into a negotiation. My response was, that was my point exactly. At that point, it was moved to approve the policy as drafted, with certain errors contained in it to be corrected, to go to the full school committee for a vote. 1 member voted no. Guess who? Over my objection, the subcommittee voted to forward the policy as drafted and presented with corrections to the full school committee for its consideration. That will happen at our meeting on October 24th. At our next meeting, we'll discuss the following 3 policies. The observation by parents, guardians, and third-party agencies in our school buildings. There's a draft policy in place, and we will be reviewing that to discuss for possible approval and passage. The second is the student-teacher policy, which is discussion only as there is no draft. The third will be the special education graduation/diploma requirements policy, which we're discussing in order to make sure we align with RIDE's new graduation requirements effective for the class of 2028, which is currently in the 9th grade. This also will be discussion only as there is currently no draft. And as we also discussed very briefly, not a whole lot of guidance yet from RIDE, much to my dismay. The next meeting of the policy subcommittee will be on Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, when those three policies will be on our agenda. The committee meeting was then adjourned after 2 hours. That is the conclusion of my report.
Mrs. Kepiscus, do you know, Ms. Kitchen know, whether or not the policy that is coming to us is in conformity with the contracts that we've been dealing with?
These are non-union employees. There is no contract.
Oh, all right. What, any agreements or whatever? I mean, are they going to be consistent? Do we know any of it?
Really question. I don't understand the question.
I'm saying whatever we have provided within the contracts, we have tried to make everything consistent, right?
Right.
And I'm wondering if that policy is going to be consistent with what's been offered to other employees within the district.
May I speak, Mr. Chair?
Of course.
Teachers and paras are 10-month employees. They're not impacted at all. They don't get vacation time. Maintenance are 12-month employees. I don't know if all are, but at least some are. So they are impacted.
Yeah.
We are only talking about 12-month employees. There were some 10-month employees that were included in the non-union benefits policy. That's one of the corrections that was taken out because 10-month employees don't get vacation time.
But we do have 12-month employees.
Yes, but those are non-union 12-month employees. There's no comparison on those particular issues. If you're talking about other benefits, leave and religious holidays and paid vacations, yes, those are all comply with all the
Okay.
other contracts. But the vacation time in particular was really where the hang-up was occurring.
Okay.
Because you can't look at 10-month contracts because they don't have vacation time.
Mhm.
And the
Right.
changes that were made were rather sweeping and had to do with longevity and did impact some employees positively and some employees negatively without them in the room to be party to that conversation. And I'm sorry, when you take vacation days away from someone, you're docking them. When you give them vacation time that they weren't previously entitled to under the other benefits policy, that's a raise. So it is negotiations. There's no question. And these people weren't party. And every single person in that room, which was my issue, except for Mr. Burke and myself, would be impacted by that policy because they're all 12-month non-union employees. My position is if that's what we're going to do in a non-union benefits policy, it should not be heard by the policy subcommittee. It's inappropriate because everyone in the room was impacted. Other people disagreed with me, obviously, because the policy is going to be coming before you. I was the only no vote. So it's coming before you. I do think that the payout, the 5-day use it or lose it, used to be a vacation time. You used it or you lost it.
Right.
Now we're providing for certain employees, basically the leadership positions, that if you don't use your vacation time at the end of the fiscal year, you can buy back those 5 days. In other words, we'll be paying you for up to 5 days of vacation time. That is a fiscal impact. I think it should be that the committee should know about, this committee should know about the potential fiscal impact.
Will that be provided? Mr. Perrier?
Yes, I could provide an update for that. It was based on all of the non-union contracts we have and the potential payout of 5 vacation days for everyone who qualifies.
Anyone else? Then I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the policy update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mrs. Kepiscus, would you give us the CLAC update?
I'd be happy to.
Good.
Select meeting was on October 4th, 2024. Happy to report that was a less contentious meeting than the policy subcommittee meeting. We had no presentation that night, but under old business, I made my monthly plea for an interested parent or guardian to take over the leadership role at CLAC from me as acting chair. There's some problems that have developed in the last week or so that I mentioned to Ms. Morel that now create an even greater conflict connected with me chairing CLAC and sitting on this committee, and I really think I need to be replaced in one position or the other. I leave to everyone to decide which one I keep going in. I'd be happy to remain as CLAC chair.
No.
So that was one thing we discussed.
Yeah,
The
I was
second
like,
is
no,
we
no.
talked about a new law that was passed by the General Assembly this past summer that increases family involvement with the IEP process, including the drafting of draft IEPs, sharing of evaluation reports. The law goes into effect July 1, 2026. But at this point, RIDE hasn't issued any guidance, as usual, as to how it's going to be implemented. Ms. Morel did raise an issue around psychological evaluation, that the ethical rules governing psychological practice prevents them from providing an evaluation report without first meeting with the parents. So internally, they are working on figuring out how that will be done. Under new business, Ms. Morel reported out on the school support visit. She advised that the few dings we did receive were mostly around progress monitoring, which is the process by which the district tracks and shows progress to families. There's an ongoing training being offered to WD staff to tighten up this progress monitoring process. There's also an issue with a very complex RIDE form, the learning disability form, which is used to report students identified as learning disabled, generally reading and or writing. There were also issues with regard to our multi-tiered system of supports, formerly known as, for those old timers like me, right to intervention, response to intervention, for evaluating students for reading and or writing disabilities. In that visit, the visit found issues around how the support system appeared to be over-identifying students for IEP evaluation, while other interventions, if given sufficient time, could resolve the issues without an LD diagnosis. The district is working on as a team, along with assistance and guidance from RIDE and New England Base Camp. Change in qualifying students for alternate assessment, DLM. New state guidelines make it harder for students to qualify for the alternate assessment. For those who don't know what that is, students who are unable to sit for the RICAS or the other standardized tests are evaluated and can be determined appropriate for an alternate assessment, which is the DLM. They're probably what you would consider the most disabled of our students. This causes as a result of these new guidelines, many of the students who previously sat for the DLM will now be forced to take the state standardized assessment for their grade level, be that RICAS, PSATs, or SATs. Part of this process included the purchase of some nonverbal assessments for use with some students. A review must now be prepared and filed at every IEP meeting for alternate assessment students, which states whether they will still be qualified for alternate assessment. Ms. Gerard and Ms. Galato have worked hard with WED staff on this issue. For example, there's an IQ cutoff of 65 for qualification for AADLM. That's new. That's one of the new changes. All new hires have been trained in the new AA evaluation, and ongoing in-service trainings are going on for all special education staff on this issue. Just a reminder, with this change, there will be students who formerly took DLM who will now be taking RICAS and PSATs and SATs. As a result, we're going to see corresponding dips in both sets of assessment scores, because students who likely score high on the DLM will now be scoring low on the RICAS, PSATs, and SATs, as it's maybe their first exposure to the tests. And another reminder from Dr. Holt, the PSAT and SAT were never designed as a summative assessment or a high-stakes test, but rather are designed as predictors for college performance, but RIDE makes the rules, not the districts. As for our DLM results we were presented with an overview of those results for 2022, 2023, and 2024. Ms. Morel presented a Google slide deck showing side-by-side comparisons of the DLM results. Students are rated as either emerging skill, approaching target, at target, or advanced. I will not steal Ms. Morel's thunder, but the slide deck she presented was extremely encouraging. That slide deck will be shared with all on the CLAC email list, so you should be receiving it if you haven't already done so. The most recent scores will be out soon to families but are currently embargoed at the WED. A reminder, these pie graphs include only students in district, as the WED has no control over the curriculum used for out-of-district students. For superintendent's report, Dr. McGee reported out that recently commenced principal teaching and learning walks, which began the day of the meeting and will continue on Thursdays. The look for this year is focused on the model of instruction, how we teach our students. Our method is one of academic discourse that is more collaborative than the teaching method many of us are familiar with from our childhoods. This method encourages a student-centered classroom, which is more challenging to all involved, but is also more deeply tied to how children actually learn. This school year with our new food service provider, Troutwell's, and our transportation provider, Durham, have been bumpy, to say the least. They're actually neck and neck. The directors at McPhee are doing their best to work out the kinks and settle into a new normal. In terms of a special education report, Ms. Morrell reported that for the most part, class placements have now settled. Students are no longer being moved from class to class, and as a result, case managers will soon be sending out families information about service providers for the students with IEPs. What that means is previously, parents weren't necessarily provided with service provider information like who's your child's OT, who's your child's SLP, who's your child's social worker. And Ms. Morrell made the change to make sure that all parents receive that information so they knew who to contact. That information will be coming out via email for those who provided valid emails, as well as in reports in your child's backpack. I raised an issue previously raised that by a parent about access to Google Meets for CLEC each month. The link is generally provided to those interested via email. That is, people interested in attending send me an email, and then I add them to the list, and then they get the link. So before the meeting, they get a link with the agenda, an email with a link to the agenda and the meeting access. However, there's no access to that link without being added to the email list. So we were discussing various ways in which we can troubleshoot that so as to make that link otherwise more available, and we're still working on troubleshooting that. But if nothing else, we're hoping to add it to the district calendar where the CLEC meeting appears. I suggested hopefully maybe we can add it to the CLEC section of the WED website, because this year the same link is going to be used for all 10 meetings. The next CLEC meeting is on Thursday, November 7th at 6 p.m. and it will be virtual. The meeting adjourned at 6:46. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Kepiscus. It seems like you're reaching out to parents to try to get more involvement in CLEC. Have there been any consideration in having activities, school-wide activities, bringing in parents, whether it's for coffee or just have discussions and have some of the kids involved? Some districts, I know they have something called a color run, and they do this. And of course, you're going to be multicolored by the time you're done. But I mean, it seems like it can bring a lot of fun, especially for some of the parents that have younger children. And they've been able to gather and get more parents involved and recruited. Maybe something to consider is to have some activity planned when the weather gets good, just to try to get more involvement and interest. Just a thought. Any comments, questions from Mrs. Kepiscus? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the CLEC update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Next, I'll ask Vice Chair Burke to give us the health and wellness update.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health and Wellness Subcommittee met this past Monday in room 124 in this building. It was our first meeting of the year. So as a result, I welcomed all the members of the subcommittee and sort of set the year to have a successful health and wellness subcommittee year. Since several individuals could not attend for various reasons, we had a brief agenda. The first item of our agenda is a report from Chartwell's. As we all know, Chartwell's is our new food service in the district. And obviously, this is their first meeting, and this is their first time to present to the Health and Wellness Subcommittee how things are going. They did talk about that they felt their summer program that they ran was successful. They talked about how their breakfast program they feel is successful, as well as their lunch program. And looking at some of their statistics, there has been some increases in lunch participation throughout the schools. Some decreases in breakfast participation throughout some of the schools. I think we can characterize Chartwell's probably right now, as a work in progress. And, we're hoping that they keep becoming used to the district and things begin to improve. They did talk about that they felt that on September 17th, they broke a lunch record in the high school. 800 lunches were served in the high school, which is a record number, I guess, for over the years. And they've said that that record has even been broken, that recently there was 140 lunches served. So that's a pretty good thing. So they presented us with a brochure, which I have given every school committee member so they can see a little bit more about what Chartwell says they're doing. They're having some difficulties getting some equipment in place because they talk about a rotisserie that they're going to have in place, and I know there's some electrical work still needing to be done. They talked about a pasta maker that they're going to be having in the district, and I'm not sure if that's in place yet, but so there are some things that obviously need some work here. They are tying in with the state program in October 17th, an Apple Crunch Day. It's a state initiative from Fresh Farm, Rhode Island. So can't wait to see what's going to happen. So mark your calendars, October 17th, Apple Crunch Day.
And we don't know what that means.
We have no idea. Okay. It's got something to do with apples, though, I think.
Okay.
The
How'd you
crunch
like,
of the
yeah,
apple.
how'd you like those apples,
bite into
So. You all know where that movie's from, correct? Okay, thank you. Also, at the same program, we heard from URI, SNAP Ed. The URI nutrition program has been very good to Woonsocket over the last 3 years. The Student Take Charge program, we've had that program involved in Harris School, Globe Park School, and recently at Citizens. Unfortunately, we're not going to have that program in one of our schools this year. However, there's a connecting program called EFNEP, and that also deals with some students' involvement with nutrition, vegetables and fruits, and that's going to be held at and worked through Savoy. So that's a good thing that was still connected to the URI SNAP Ed program. We also heard from the Woonsocket Prevention Coalition, and I did mention that earlier when Dr. McGee was talking about after-school programs, because the Woonsocket Prevention Coalition does offer a series of programs in our schools, high school, middle school, especially. And a lot of it does deal with meetings with kids over various topics. And because the Prevention Coalition deals with attempts to try and curtail abuse, alcohol, drugs, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of education that they provide. So throughout October, there will be the Equal program will be meeting, the SWAG program is going to meet, as well as Above the Influence program will be meeting at different times throughout our schools. So that information is being presented throughout the schools. So that's a good after-school program. And finally, we heard very briefly from the Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition. There was going to be a breakfast October, I forget the date.
23rd.
October 23rd. Several members of the district will be there, and the Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition runs this every year, so we will be there as well. And one final thing. There's also a new program in the state called Adopt a Cow.
What?
And guess what? Citizen School has adopted a cow. Remember the name? I forget the name, but.
Moo Moo the
It
cow?
was Daisy. So there's a lot of schools are involved in a lot of these endeavors. So isn't that kind of exciting to hear all that? So, and that I believe is that was the end of our meeting. We ended about 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Vice Chair Burke, any comments, questions, especially about the call? Mrs. Costa, please.
So I want to apologize because unfortunately I've been very sick for the past almost month now and haven't been able to attend meetings. But I have heard from the kids that they are loving the lunch menu a lot better than what we had before. So I guess that's a plus in the right direction. So
Which kids are you talking about? What grades?
I've heard from some elementary school kids
Okay.
and then from some high school kids as well.
Okay, that's good.
It's good.
And I understand, as an aside, I understand Mr. Perrier has dibs on the rotisserie.
Me
Right?
too.
I know. Any other comments?
Andy's Candies too.
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the health and wellness update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Notoriani, would you speak to us about technology and facilities?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as of this evening, we have 102 overall technology work orders in the system. 94 are related to technology infrastructure and 8 are related to our data systems. The tech and data staff continue to resolve issues as quickly as possible and provide support. Additionally, our data staff are working on the October 1st snapshot report. We have until the 16th of October to resolve any issues, and which ties into our potential March 1st snapshot report. These data collections drive the funding formula, and they're directly linked, it's worth noting, they're directly linked to the data entry that occurs in each main office by the building secretaries and overseen by the building principals. So it's the data that comes from the schools into our system up to the state. In addition to those work orders, we just moved over 55 work orders related to Chromebook damages. The business office will be generating invoices. We'll be forwarding them to the building principals so they can have conversation with parents and guardians and students about recouping monies based on the damages that have incurred that we've deemed malicious. Starting next week, we'll begin the distribution of new MacBooks to each staff member. Our tentative schedule is on the memo, but basically we're going to start with Coleman, move on to Savoy, Harris, Globe, Vernon, Portia Citizens, Hamlet, Villanova, then the high school career tech. The rollout should run from October through to the just about the end of December, and all staff will have the new MacBooks that the school committee graciously purchased earlier this year. As discussed at our during the technology facilities update in September, the tech department will be implementing new cybersecurity protocols as a requirement of our insurance carrier and as a best practice. While our overall quantity of work orders has gone down, you may recall that I stated our goal was to get to around 50. We did not meet that goal this month. I did meet with the tech staff, and hopefully going to push and we can get us to that goal for the next month. Student registrations, we continue to see registrations on a daily basis. It has slowed down slightly from the busy time of year, but student registrations do come in regularly. Facilities custodial services, as of today, we have 381 work orders, 305 are assigned in-house. The remaining work orders are designated for outside contractors or vendors. We presently have 2 vacancies in the department, as Dr. McGee outlined earlier, and we also have several openings for lunch monitors at the elementary level if anyone knows of anyone that's interested in those positions. Transportation. On Tuesday, October 8th, we participated in a meeting with Dave Arment, Vice President of East Coast Operations for Durham School Services. Durham will be presenting a plan to the Facilities and Safety Subcommittee at the next meeting, which they hope will improve their operations. There was an extensive discussion, and I guess at this point I would say that this is a long-term work in progress versus Chartwell's, which is a short-term work in progress. And then finally, the SRO meeting that occurred last week, we discussed traffic concerns at the high school career tech and at Portia and Citizens. The safety hazard survey is under review and submission for Dr. McGee, which I believe will be presented at the next school committee meeting. And additional radios were provided to schools to ensure adequate coverage. The ALICE refresher training is occurring at the secondary level. And there is a typo because there was another line. I must have cut it off. We did deliver Narcan. Blackstone Valley Prevention Coalition graciously provided a free Narcan for all of our AED units in the schools, and that was picked up and placed in all the schools last week. So that concludes my report, Chairman.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair Burke.
Mr. Notarani, the new MacBooks that will be given to the staff,
Yes.
okay, just refresh my memory. What do they have right now?
Chromebooks.
Okay, Chromebooks. Now, when they get the new MacBooks, are they able to incorporate under the same system? Because, MacBooks are Apple. Are Chromebooks Apple? That's Google.
Chromebooks are Chromebooks, Apple or Apple, and Windows is HP or any of the other brands. So our rollout is going to be, we're going to give a new MacBook to every staff member. They already have an iPad, so our district has given them an iPad, and they gave them a Chromebook. We're going to give them a MacBook, and in order to ease the transition from using a Chromebook to a MacBook, we're going to allow the staff to keep their Chromebook to the end of the school year, or towards the end of the school year, and we will collect them. But I think the best analogy, Mr. Burke, being an educator, is the MacBook, the Chromebook, and a Windows device, while they are all different because they're a slightly different platform, it's a concept. It's called a graphical user interface where you point and click. So while you may be pointing and clicking in different areas in the system, the OS, the concept is you find it on the screen and you point and click and access whatever it is that resource you may need. It may take some time to adjust to find out in a Mac, you point and click in this area and the application might be slightly named differently, but we're hoping that they can adapt to it over a period of time.
Okay. Just curious.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Leclerc,
Relative to the Durham discussions, were they positive, negative? How did that flow?
How do they always flow? Sorry.
So I'll be frank, Mr. Leclerc.
Please.
I think the first 25 minutes of the meeting, they did not really enjoy the discussion. We probably presented 25 minutes of all of the failures that have occurred over the last 5 years. I did share the chairman's probably favorite example of their incompetence, which was a bus showing up with no players on it for an athletic event. And then we kind of went down the line with various other issues to the point where they just can't answer for the fact that we funded 19 buses and they only ran 18 to start the school year off with. And nobody can explain to me why they had funding for a 19th bus, but they chose not to run it. So I would say it didn't go well for them.
Like that.
And I guess maybe cooler minds prevailed. Dr. McGee joined the conversation and I think, buttoned up the conversation nicely. Long-term work in progress, Mr. Leclerc. That's what I'm going to go with for Durham School Services.
They fully understand our issues.
So the vice president of East Coast Operations at one point just said understood,
Okay.
and then said he wanted to look forward to how they're going to resolve issues. So
Not thrilled about it, but it is what it is. Let's move forward and see where we can get.
Dr. McGee, can you add to that conversation since you were there?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. I think the points were made. I think they were received. I mean, this was literally, Mr. Durham was there, if you will. So he understands the issues. Mr. Notarianni made it very clear to them. There are some short-term issues and some long-term issues that we talked about. So, where one of the things, a lot of things came from that meeting. One of the things that came out is that a group of us will be meeting with them regularly, whether it's weekly or biweekly. So we're at least meeting with them face to face when issues arise. We also discussed and came to an agreement finally. Mr. Notarianni seemingly made it very clear to them prior to that meeting, but it wasn't received. But I think it's received now that the is it the coordinator? What's the title of the gentleman who spends a lot of his time in Cumberland, but will now be spending 100% of his time in Woonsocket?
Mark Dumont is he's like the general manager of Cumberland and Woonsocket. And Dr. McGee's referring to the fact that we requested in February, the operational manager for Woonsocket left Durham, Lisa. Fantastic person, great to work with, really held things together. They left, and we had requested then that Mark Dumont spend more time here in Woonsocket keeping an eye on things because they shifted over Robert Hart from Cumberland. And we discovered that Mr. Dumont was not spending a lot of time. Maybe he spent some time here, but not probably, in my opinion, the amount necessary to keep an eye on our operations. So we did have another conversation and asked for Mr. Dumont to be here. I talked to Francisco Montero, the statewide coordinator for Durham, on the phone with Dr. McGee, and Francisco put in writing that Mark would be here full-time effective, I think it was last week. And then yesterday during the meeting, I inquired, because Dr. McGee and I drove over to the Durham site here, and he wasn't there. We inquired, and then we were told he was going to be there about 90% of the time. But I'm pretty sure the message was delivered that it's going to be 100% of the time. And I'll be driving by every day now. So one of my tasks will be is I'll be driving by every day. Maybe Dr. Me, if you want to join me, a few of them. We'll be checking to make sure that he's there.
If the short term doesn't work out and the long term starting to become an issue, maybe we should have the so-called Mr. Durham come by and see us and have a conversation with us.
So I'm not sure if Mr. Durham will be present. I will suggest that, but we are going to have a facility subcommittee meeting where they will present additional options. Most likely, I was going to talk to Mr. Leclerc as one of the subcommittee members. I've already talked to Chairman Bourget about doing one next week where they are going to present their updated plan to get us back on track, or at least mitigate some of the major issues we're experiencing. Again, with some short-term solutions, and there are some long-term ones that we're all aware of with transportation. And then I would suggest at the second meeting that we have an agenda on the school committee meeting, a topic where they could present. And I suspect that Mr. Ahmet will fly up here again. He flew up from New Jersey. Perhaps he'll fly up again.
What is the name of the other supervisor?
So there's Francisco Montero's the statewide coordinator.
Right.
There is Mark Dumont, who is the not operations manager, but he's the general manager, and he handles Cumberland and Woonsocket. And then we now have a local operations manager replace Lisa Lamoth, which is Bruce Lemoy. And I will state Bruce has really put a lot of effort into trying to communicate better. Bruce calls often, emails. There's a lot better communication coming from Bruce, but I don't think these issues, and I don't think Bruce can solve it at his level. This is a higher level discussion that should have occurred in the spring or the summer, and they still haven't been able to answer why they didn't, and while we're now here in October.
And who do they report to?
They report to Mr. Ahmet, who is the East Coast, the Vice President of East Coast Operations. That is Mr. Durham in this scenario.
Okay.
There's only two people above Mr. Ahmet. That's the Chief Operating Officer and then the CEO of the company. So we have the third ranking person.
Mr. There was another gentleman.
Just another one.
Oh,
What's his
so
name?
let's see, Francisco. There was someone. There was
Another gentleman that was there as well, but
his name escaped. Oh, Mr. Schmuck. Mr. Schmuck was in attendance.
I guess
Mr.
that as
Schmuck
well.
is the New England manager of Durham School Services. Sorry about that.
I thought there was another. Let me ask you, are all the special needs children being taken care of? I know early on we had problems at Roots because that we didn't get the schedule, they didn't get the schedule. How about our special ed kids who really need that extra care? How's that going?
I think you're doing a deplorable job with our special needs students. I'll be frank. I think there's significant room for improvement. In particular, right now, we're presently running 18 general buses, and we're running 2 what we call medically fragile buses, or the medical buses, 200 and 201, and those are consistently late. There are some factors that are involved with that are outside Durham's control. For example, there's a need, depending on student circumstances, there's a need to have a nurse available, where we need to work about picking up the nurse, getting them to the school with the student, and getting back. And those are some logistics that we need to work through. So historically, they've been late consistently since I've been responsible for transportation. We've done some things to fix it, but that is an area that they do need to improve, and I'm hoping that that's going to be part of their.
Can we ask them to prioritize that? Because seems like they're the neediest of the needy.
So they are,
With
Chairman. I
children.
think we're going to run into some fiscal challenges, and I think that's a really, when we have the subcommittee meeting and then eventually the school committee meeting, I think that's something where the committee is going to eventually have to weigh in. We have to provide all the facts, and we're going to have to take a hard look at that, because there are 2 medical buses. There is significant need in our city. Our medical programs at the elementary level, where there's the most intense need, occur at Globe Park Elementary School, and that is at the end of the runs. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon Durham, when we meet next Friday, to provide us an option where maybe we need a 3rd medical bus, and that's an expense that we would have to discuss, and it'd be something we'd have to discuss with Mrs. Morel and Mrs. Gerard in terms of how we would make that work.
Is
But
there any outside funding that could be available for this? That's a rhetoric. I don't know if there's an answer to that, but maybe something we need to look into.
so we do get and without getting into specific of the details, and I think either Mr. Morel or Mr. Perry could add in, but we do have, aside from our general funding, we do Medicaid billing based on student attendance on the buses, which is intended to offset transportation. But I'm just not sure if it's significant enough to cover the full expense of the buses. But if realistically, I think in order to solve the issue with the medically fragile students, it might be best if we entertain looking at potentially a 3rd bus. But again, there's a significant cost. I want to say it's probably about $100,000 a year for an additional bus, $150,000 a year for medically fragile bus, and we'd have to look to see if that truly could mitigate the issues in terms of that. The subcommittee will see next Friday that even with the proposed changes to alleviate some of the lateness in terms of the drop-offs and the pickups, and as Dr. McGee, I believe, saw, I know you had stepped out for a call, but they did have a display, I think you did see, is that they think they can mitigate the time from many of the buses, but I don't think, based on the current layout and fleet, they can do that for the medically fragile buses without looking at adding an additional bus.
To be discussed at the next meeting, I guess.
What is the big change from last year? That it's such a horrible mess this year. And I know you don't need to get too much into it, but I mean, it's generally the same number of buses.
So
Did the student population rise ridiculously so?
No. So to just be very frank, last year we ran 19 or 20 buses when they could, because they lacked drivers. So last year we benefited from the fact that we had additional ESSER money, COVID money, that allowed us to have an additional bus. If you remember, they were supposed to give us 2 extra buses, but they couldn't find drivers. And then they got to the point where they couldn't run the minimum they had before COVID because they didn't have drivers, and they were able to sometimes run them and sometimes they weren't. I think specific to your question about last year versus this year is last year we ran our routes under Lisa Lamoth, and we ran routes that were calibrated through the computer system, but with institutional knowledge, historical knowledge of how the city operates. So adjustments were made. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples. This year, under Mr. Dumont, and he's well aware because this was his program. He ran it. They took all the data that we sent. Well, first off, they didn't request any data. We wait for them to say when we're ready. Instead of doing that in July, they didn't ask for it till August. They then blamed us for not providing it earlier. And then after they ran it, they just took it and ran it through a computer system. And as you're aware, my background is in IT. And they just took whatever the computer system said, slapped it into a file, sent it out to everyone because they were under the gun. And examples as to where there's an error with that is that any leadership that had historical knowledge would know that, for example, traffic backs up on Cass Avenue. You need to adjust for the fact that the dismissal times are awful there. There are bus stops that we're running to this day. Well, I would hope not after yesterday's meeting. But there are buses that pull up to a bus stop where no student has got on the bus at that bus stop since August 29th. And they still stop there knowing that no one's gotten on there for the last 30 days. And they've yet to contact the principal to verify we don't need to run this stop. And I only say that because I directly asked them yesterday, have you done this? And they told me no. And you would have thought that after visiting them in person, which I've done on multiple occasions since the beginning of September, to say, what can we do to speed it up? And they told me this was occurring. It took them a month, and yet they still haven't made that change. That should significantly improve times. That and there alone. Two, the computer system just ran through and put people at bus stops that logically looked okay on a bus stop. And as some of the committee members are aware, because we've seen phone calls from parents, as you have as well. I personally, or Dr. McGee has been involved as well. This is just me. I go to Dr. McGee and talk all the time for advice. We had to get involved and actually manually change bus stops for them and say, stop picking them up on this street, pick them up over here. And it's not just myself and Dr. McGee. Our building principal, I want to call Donna Cordier at Savoy, has been very helpful in adjusting bus stops for us over for her school. She provides a lot of input in terms of what's occurring there. So that's what we're doing. I've had colleagues here in the admin team that reached out to say, this bus stop was here for the last 10 years, and now they suddenly moved it. And why? It's
Fine.
incompetence is the most polite thing I can say on the radio right now here in Woonsocket. Incompetent Durham, I would say it that way.
As I asked last meeting, can we reopen the contract? I'm done.
I think we can discuss some of those. I think we can have a general discussion at the subcommittee, and then maybe.
Yeah, why don't we handle some of this at the subcommittee
I'm good.
and ask these questions? Anyone else? Ms. Costa?
So you said that we paid to run 19 buses at the beginning of the year and only ran 18?
So, no, so if I may, and I'll make it brief, last year, Mr. Perry and I caught the fact that they tried to bill us for 19 buses, but foolishly, well, not foolishly, they billed us for 19 buses for several months, and then as we were reviewing the invoices to pay them, they had to issue us a credit because we found out they would send an email saying we couldn't run 19 buses. What they called is, when they combine a bus, they say they buried a bus. That's their term. I don't know what that means other than they combine a bus. So when they combine a bus because we have enough drivers, they still billed us per bus. Their argument is that we still transported the same number of students. However, after reviewing with Mr. Perrier, we discovered that our contract language states that you charge us per bus, not per student. So I believe they were forced to credit us approximately $50,000 for the year because they didn't run the number of buses they tried to bill us for. This year, because they know we're looking at it, they're supplying 18 buses. When I say we funded 19, is we budgeted for them to run 19 general buses and 2 special ed buses. But they're only able to run, they only chose to run 18 buses. They only scheduled and routed for 18 buses, and nobody can answer for me why they wouldn't have done 19. And when I say that, there was no discussion to say, hey, Al, we don't have a 19th driver, we're working on it. No, they just only ran 18. They ran less buses, and they wonder why we're having all these problems. Or they're not, because they're incompetent.
All right.
And then my second thing is that you said you have somebody going there daily to check to make sure who is the person that's supposed to be there?
Well, that's Mark Dumont, and that's me. I'm the daily person that's going to check there. I'm going to literally drive by there.
Well,
on the way to get
I might
coffee.
be able to save you a couple of steps because I deliver to them daily. So I can probably go and check them out for you and make sure that he's doing his job correctly. And I get paid to do it. Isn't that lovely?
Nothing's going to make me happier than tomorrow when I call him up and let him know that you'll be checking in.
Oh, I sure will be.
Good Lord.
Buddy.
Anyone else? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the technology facilities update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa, Mr. Leclerc. All in favor signify by saying aye. The first item of new business is I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the memorandum of agreement with the Nonviolence Institute. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa and Mr. Leclerc. Dr. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the committee has the MOU for the Nonviolence Institute. I just wanted to let everybody know that this is a continuation MOU that we've had with the Nonviolence Institute, and it includes services that they've been providing us for the last year And those services include, we have consultations with them in which they send representatives to our safety, our superintendent's safety cabinet meeting, which meets biweekly on Monday morning. It rotates between the high school, Villanova and Hamlet middle schools. So that's one piece of that. That's been very helpful in them attending those meetings with us and strategizing with us for the past year or so. They also provide training modules for in the areas of nonviolence, Kingian nonviolence. So they provide those training modules to our peer mentors, our students at both the high school and the middle schools, as well as to our staff, select staff in those. And we also have an outreach provider that works in mainly in the middle schools. However, he also does some work at the high school as well. So he's proven to be very, very valuable in the work that we're doing. So this hasn't changed. It's just a continuation of the MOU. So I would highly recommend that the committee approve the MOU so we can continue our partnership with the Nonviolence Institute.
Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair Burke.
just quickly, so this is our second year
Yes.
with this group. I know this is an awkward way that you can't really measure
Yeah.
outcomes, but
Yeah.
has it made a difference? And have we seen the difference in places?
I do. I believe it has made a difference. And it is hard, Vice Chair Burke, to measure an outcome here, because what this work is doing is it's helping us to establish a culture at the secondary level, and certainly across the district and across the community. But it's helped us to sort of reestablish a culture of nonviolence. Now, is there still violence in the community? Yes, there is. However, the work that the nonviolence has done with our students and our staff and the administrators and in the district has really, I think, prevented things from happening both in the community and at the schools as well. And those are things that you can't really measure, but we know based on our conversations and based on the work that we're doing with our students and our families, that it is helping a great deal.
Vice Chair Burke. Are you all
That's
set?
good. No, that's good answer.
Anyone else? Ms. Costa.
I just want to say that knowing a few families that do work with the Nonviolence Institute, some of the students are not really comfortable talking about what goes on personally in their homes. And with the Nonviolence Institute, it's a very safe place for these children to go to and ask for help and state what they're going through. And these people that work with them are amazing. They really devote their time and they're very dedicated to these students, and it makes these students feel safe because students talk to other students about it. So it brings more awareness. And I think that what we do with them is absolutely amazing. So,
And just to add on to that, so our outreach specialist is Justin McLaurin, and he actually worked at the Boys and Girls Club for a while. So he's over the years just sort of naturally he's developed some positive relationships with many youth in the city, and Justice does an amazing job. This is he's been with us almost a year, but he's someone who's from the community, knows the community, went through Woonsocket High School. He does a great job. Shane Lee is another of the nonviolence workers who does a lot of training with our peer mentors and does a lot of training with our staff from the high school and the middle school. So we're really lucky to have them here in the community and at the middle schools and at the high school.
Right. Anyone else? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the memorandum of understanding with Otisha Chaplin. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Mrs. Costa. Again, Dr. McGee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Ms. Chaplin has been working with the beloved Woonsocket group for approximately a year. As I think I stated earlier, Mr. Leclerc, that it's the grant is a 3-year grant for Beloved, and this is one component, and this is an important component because she works very closely with Gigi DeBello, who really procured the grant a year ago. And Ms. Chaplin, what Ms. Chaplin does is, because Gigi can't do it alone, because of sort of the magnitude
Sure.
of bringing all of these citywide organizations together to decrease the violence in the community. But Ms. Chaplin has done a wonderful job of, establishing a trusted figure in the community. She's from the community. She has a history in the community. She was gone for a little while to pursue her career, but she's back, and she's a trusted member of the community who can reach out to our organizations and just to the community as a whole. She's conducted numerous focus groups and has coordinated the monthly meetings that we had for the first year for the beloved Woonsocket plan. So she really is a great asset
Great.
to this to this project. So and again, this would be a continuation of that grant.
Any questions, anyone?
Mr. Chairman.
Chair Burke.
Yeah, sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Beloved Woonsocket is funded by the Rhode Island Foundation, correct?
Yes.
And though her stipend is not that big of a deal, but
Yes.
why is this not also part of that foundation funding? 'Cause
So
we pay her stipend.
So we pay the stipend, but it's not out of our local budget. We pay it through the grant.
Oh, we do,
So,
okay.
yeah.
It just said,
Yeah.
it says it'll be paid by the Woonsocket Education Department. I didn't see where the grant was.
Yeah. So there is a grant. So I believe we're reimbursed with
Perry,
from the Rhode Island Foundation
Yeah,
for her salary.
it is through a grant, and it's a reimbursement type basis.
I just read, I didn't
Yeah.
see that in the agreement. It was
Yeah. No.
clearly
It's
from us, and just curious.
yeah. It's through us by way of the
Okay.
grant.
Well, that's what I would think, yeah.
Excellent.
That Pepito Foundation thing.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget.
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Having no other items on our agenda, I'll make a motion to adjourn at 8:18 PM. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.